The Village Atop the Eye by E.H. Amos. 4 American paratroopers descended in near silence behind German lines, their silhouettes barely visible against the dark sky. Below, the countryside of northern France stretched out like a shadowed canvas, the village of Verneuil-sur-Aisne lying just beyond the tree line to their right. The fire team drifted steadily towards their landing zone. One after the other, the 4 members landed and disengaged from their parachutes. "Do a sweep and set up a perimeter here," Corporal Henry McAllister said to the others in his gruff, over-smoked voice. A faint Boston accent clung to the stench of cigarettes on his breath. He clambered behind a thick fallen tree and checked his gear. He was 25, almost the oldest of the group, and had seen his fair share of combat during the Great War. He was in charge of the fire team sent out tonight, at least until they found what they were looking for. Private Richard Monroe, the team's sniper, ran to the tree and pulled out a pair of binoculars to scan for German patrols. Richard Dick Monroe was 22 and had 20 confirmed kills. He was always on about needing those last 2 and had even volunteered for this mission on the chance he could get them. 22 was his personal lucky number. Private Mason Winters moved out to secure the landing zone. Pistol drawn, the youngest member of the group moved swift and sure through the underbrush and tall grass. Mace Winters was barely 16, a skinny kid who was some kind of prodigy at medicine. He was only sent on special missions, and this was only his 3rd. He had no confirmed kills, but had already saved over a dozen lives. That included the 2 Germans who gave up the valuable intel about the tiny little town just south of their position. Dr. Lillian Thompson landed last, smoothly disengaged from her parachute, and ran up to the fallen tree to take cover. She was 31, limber, and soft-spoken. There were dozens of rumors about how she managed to get into the army at all, much less rise to the rank she held, but none were confirmed. Few people even knew of her. Those that did only knew Lillian Doc Thompson made a perfect score on all aptitude tests and was the Army's best-kept secret. "Listen up," Corporal Henry said. "Quick recap before we go in. Tell me what we're doing, all of you. Dick?" Richard Monroe nodded in response to his nickname. He unslung the sniper rifle and began setting up on the fallen tree. His voice was low and direct, serious, and almost too quiet. "Leapfrogging it to the Aisne village. Me on watch. Set up somewhere high when we get there. Keep an eye out for patrols." "Good," Henry said. "Mace?" Private Mason Winters nodded too hard, making his glasses slip down his sweat-slicked forehead. He pushed them back up. "Yes, sir. Here, sir. I follow you, provide cover, and keep you all alive despite your best efforts to get killed." He sounded young, over-enthusiastic, and naive. He had proved not to be, but this book had a difficult cover to overlook. Henry bobbed his head. "Good enough. Doc?" Dr. Lillian Thompson was already looking at a map she had unfolded after getting behind the tree. "Move through the town, locate our target, do something about it, then get the hell out." "A+ all round," Henry said. "Now listen up, I'm only going to say this once. Yes, it is unconventional to have a woman along for the ride, but she's an operational scientist, which means she outranks us all, technically. And she's the only one who'll know how to deal with whatever we find in there, so don't give her any lip and follow her every word, 'cause tonight she is your guiding Valkyrie and the word of God. Am I understood?" Mace raised his skinny hand. Dick slapped it down. "Sarge." "Not your sergeant." "Yeah, I know. Anyway, Sarge, does this mean we listen to her instead of you if you 2 argue?" Dick stared. "Didn't Sarge just say she outranked us all?" "He said technically." "You listen to me first," Henry said. "After we spot the target, she takes over. Got it?" Mace nodded too hard again and readjusted his glasses. "This is a big deal, guys. The French are about to let the Germans punch through Chateau Thierry, so they'll abandon Verneuil-sur-Aisne. They'll leave a skeleton crew here, and we're going to have to take them as quiet as we can so they don't turn around. The whole time we're in there, the French are going to be letting the Germans win and losing people, so we don't dawdle. Questions?" Mace raised his hand again. Dick pulled it down below the fallen tree and slapped the side of Mace's helmet. "Cut it out!" Mace hissed. "I did well in my classes. I liked my education. Can't help it, my manners stuck with me." He looked at Henry. "How do we know when—" Off in the distance, an explosion sounded. Not long after, hoots and hollers of excitement flowed through the tiny village ahead. The sounds of advance built up, then faded out, as many of the German soldiers in the village moved south to help with the battle at Atop the Eye. The team waited, patient. "Now," Dick said, holstering his binoculars and peering through his sniper rifle. The other three advanced, staying low and moving quickly from the fallen tree to the closest house. The building was wooden, and a single lantern was still lit inside. Henry stood a little taller and peeked in through the window. The dim light flickered, unsure of itself, and conducting shadowed shapes in a dance around the rough-hewn wooden stone. A couple, French civilians, were still inside. Henry hissed a curse. "What?" Doc asked. "We got civvies," he groaned under his breath. "Some couple too stubborn to leave." Dick caught up with them, voice low and hushed. "I counted 2 left behind." "There's no way," Mace whispered, shaking his head. "No way at all. They'd leave more than 2 people here." "They didn't," Dick said. "And I need both of those kills, so leave them to me." "That's not how this works," Henry said. "Dick, how sure are you that there's only 2 guys left behind?" "I'd bet my life on it." "Then do it," Henry said with a nod. "Take Mace. Both of you get 1 guy at the same time. Do it quick. Do it quiet. Drag them to the closest shadow." 22, Dick said. Mace and Henry repeated it. Dick and Mace nodded and advanced. Doc gestured to them and held her hand out, palm up. 22, Henry said. His lucky number. He thinks something special will happen when he gets to 22 kills. Henry sighed. "How you want to take care of the locals?" "Subdue, ignore." Henry nodded. "Let's go." Henry and Doc quietly opened the front door, knives drawn. They slipped inside, Henry nodding towards the woman. Doc nodded in return, and in a swift practice motion, Henry threw an arm around the man's arms and chest, and another gloved hand over his mouth. Doc did the same to the woman who tried to scream through her hand. Henry kicked the door behind him, and it swung shut. "Quiet!" Henry hissed. The man stopped thrashing. He tried to quietly mumble something around Henry's hand. Henry dared to let him. "Si sont des bouches?" the man asked, his voice ragged, tired, and quiet. The woman grunted. Henry nodded at Doc, who moved her own hand. "Non, pas bouche. Américains?" she asked. Henry nodded once more, and the 2 of them let the couple go. Henry put a finger up to his lips and said, "Shh." The woman ran to her husband and threw herself into his arms. She sobbed, quietly, and mumbled, "Pourquoi sont-ils ici?" Doc sheathed her knife and extended a hand, palm out. Henry's eyes were closed and he was grimacing in concentration. "How did that damn thing again go for sit down and shut up?" he finally asked, exasperated. "Tais-toi, babushka?" Doc looked at the Frenchman and said, "Tais-toi, ne bouge pas." "That's the one," Henry said. The man nodded and guided his wife to their table. They sat down. Doc smiled and gave them a thumbs up. She pointed at the man and said, "Un." She pointed at the woman. "Deux." She held up both hands in a questioning gesture. "A l'aide?" The man shook his head and stammered, "22, 22, 22." "There's 22 people still in this village?" she asked. "Oh, freaking fantastic," Henry spat. He walked to the front door and peered out of the window. "Are they all civvies? Aw, man, the only one who's gonna like this is Dick." Doc thought for a moment. "Doc," Henry asked, impatient as he started poking around the interior of the building. "Shut up," she said. "I'm thinking, so I get it right the first time." She gestured to the whole town. "Tout est possible?" "Oui, oui," the man nodded. "Nous sommes aussi pacifiques que notre étis." "What'd he say?" Henry asked, sounding stressed. "I have no idea," Doc said. "He said it way too fast, but I asked if everyone was peaceful, and he said yes twice. Is that good enough for you?" "Ask how many Germans are still here, if they're hiding any." "No," Doc said, giving the man one last smile and thumbs up. "We have no idea how much or how little time we have." She whispered to Henry, "We need to trust your team. They said 2 Germans, now it's 0, and I'm saying this place is peaceful." "Fine," Henry said. "Can you get them to go tell the others to stay inside?" Doc turned and walked back to the man. "Dites à tout le monde?" He nodded. Dites à tout le monde, tais-toi, ne bouge pas. The man said, Police American. No, 9, Doc hissed. Oh, God, not 9. Sorry, it's... No, none. None. She looked up at the man again. Non-American. Dites à tout le monde, tais-toi, ne bouge pas. The man looked confused and scared. Police Allemand? Non, Doc said, waving in frustration and losing her posture. Non, she said, enunciating her words as if to a child. Dites à tout le monde, tais-toi, ne bouge pas. Oui, the man said. He shook his wife, who finally looked up from his chest, her eyes still wet with tears. The man looked up at Doc and motioned at himself and his wife. He repeated, slowly, Dites à tout le monde de se taire et de ne pas bouger. He mimed laying down to sleep with his head and said, Shh, oui. Oui, Doc said, letting them slip past and out the door as she turned to Henry. Good God, it's about time. Where's your guys? They're coming up now. Henry waved his men inside as they jogged up. Mace held out his arms in a what gesture, turning and motioning to the 2 French locals as they ran to another house. Henry shook his head and motioned indoors. Mace and Dick clambered inside and Henry shut the door. Both guards taken care of, Dick said. Did a quick sweep. The town's clear. Oh, Dick, you'll like this. Guy said there was 22 civvies here. Dick grinned. What'd I tell you? Lucky number. How was Doc's French? Mace asked with a smile in his voice. I love to hear a woman speak French. It was flawless, Henry muttered, his voice flat. What a nice compliment. Don't make me hear it again. Yes, sir, Sarge, sir, Mace mumbled as he lowered his head. We gotta get to their church, Doc said. What we're looking for is in there. See a church out there? Yes, ma'am, Mace said. Sir, Dick corrected. But it's sir. Yes, sir. Sirs? Look, man, I saw a church out there. Good enough? Doc groaned but nodded. Show me. Let's go. Hold it, Henry said, putting his hand out in front of Doc. Remember, I'm in charge. He thumbed at himself. You get to take over when we find what Intel told us to find. Have we found it yet, Doctor? He enunciated her title like it was below his own. No, sir, she said, her face betraying no emotion. Then you take command when we do. Fire team, on me. He waved at the team, and they filed out of the building, weapons drawn. Mace pointed them towards the church. They tried to be quiet, but everywhere they went, people were reacting to the instructions by doing the opposite. Lanterns were being lit, people were staring out of their windows, and one man brazenly opened his door and stepped out on his porch. He lit a corncob pipe, sat in a rocking chair, and stared down the fire team as they advanced on the little church near the center of town. We sweep the church, Henry said. Dick gets the bell tower. Mace, check the bathrooms. I gotta take a whiz when we clear this place, so check every stall. Doc, check under all the pews. I'm poking around the back. 22. The team repeated the chant. 22. The search took barely minutes. Mace jogged up to Henry and gave a slightly out of breath, All clear. Why you out of breath? Henry asked in disgust. Thought kicking the stall doors in would save time, he said with a shrug. Did it? No, sir. Henry sighed. Dick, anything alive up there? Bats, Dick called back down. Not much else. Got a good eye on the village. Good. Doc? She shook her head. All right, in the back there's a staircase leading down into a basement of some kind. I didn't check it. Dick and I are going to draw up an escape plan for when we need one. Doc, check the basement for the objective. Take Mace with you. Mace? Doc's in charge. The whole time. Mace nodded, shifting his glasses again. This time he adjusted them by wrinkling his nose. Got it, Sarge. Follow, was all Doc said when she went for the basement. Mace obeyed. The stairs were stone and went far down. They couldn't tell how far because the staircase was spiraled. It wasn't wide enough for 2 at a time. The walls were cramped and the space was tight. They began their descent, Doc in front and Mace behind. It went on for what felt like forever. Hey, Doc, Mace said, after it became apparent they would be walking for a while. What? She asked. Can you teach me something in French? Like what? Mace shrugged. I don't know, whatever you can teach me in 30 seconds. Maybe something to tell the ladies. Doc snorted. Vete faire foutre. Sounds nice. What does it mean? You are very beautiful, Doc said with a grin. Mace nodded, mumbling the phrase to himself again and again in different tones, testing it out like it was a pickup line. Thanks, Doc, he finally said. Can't wait to try this one out. The stairs and walls started growing slick with condensation. The air became cooler and more musty. In the distance was the sound of water trickling, its echo resounding inside of a large space. After what felt like a mile's worth of stairs, the two had finally hit the bottom. The walls had become rough, uneven, and slick with condensation. You gotta be kidding me, Doc said. How far down is this? Mace asked. We hit a cave. The room expanded to a tunnel in stone. Lanterns, still lit, were lined in the corridor. Doc let out a low hiss. This isn't good. Go back up and get Sarge. But I can't just leave... Mace, Doc snapped. Did he say you were in charge or that I was? That you were, sir. So what are you gonna do next? Sir, I'm going to fetch Sarge, sir. Good, now go. Mace scurried back up the steps and towards the surface. Doc checked her ammo and chamber and the Lewis machine gun slung around her back before drawing her sidearm in one hand and a trench knife in the other. Doc advanced, slow and cautious. Mace made it to the top of the stairs, dripping sweat and heaving. What's wrong? Henry asked. Mace sucked in deep breaths of air and clutched at a pain under his ribs as he answered. Doc said, get Sarge. Cave. Occupied. There's an occupied cave at the bottom? Henry asked. Mace doubled over and nodded. He shook his glasses free and they cracked on impact with the ground. He groaned and picked them up, blowing them off before putting them back on. Henry nodded. All right. Dick, how's it looking up there? Dead. Everyone went back inside and put their lights out. Booby-trap this place. We'll be back. Mace, let's go. He started down the stairs. 22, Dick called after them. 22, Henry said, starting down the stairs. Mace sighed in exasperation but followed. They jogged down the stairs until they reached the bottom. Mace took a weary seat and gasped, Legs. Jelly. Stay put, Henry said as he moved down the lit corridor. There was a sharp turn to the left up ahead. Henry double-checked the condition of his weapons and unslung his machine gun. He checked the chamber to make sure it was loaded. Henry leaned around the left corner to see another well-lit tunnel. This one ended in a wooden door. He continued forward, slow and steady. There was an incessant hum on the other side of the door. He tried the brass knob. It turned, and the door moved inward. The hum grew into what could have been a chant of some kind. Henry took a deep breath and braced himself for the recoil if he needed to open fire. This is it, he thought to himself. You're about to lose command no matter what's on the other side. Enjoy this last moment. He cocked his head and pushed open the door. On the other side was Doc, her weapons at her sides, staring in awe and confusion. The chamber ahead was opulent, carved and polished stone to a perfectly smooth dome overhead. Lanterns hung on the walls and cast eerie glows on the backs and shoulders of people dressed in red robes bowing to a pit in the center of the room. There were at least another dozen tunnels leading towards directions of each house in the village. The couple from the first building Doc and Henry cleared were back, descending one of the tunnels and dressed in the same red robes. The chamber was buzzing with a wordless chanting of noise all the members were humming at the same time. When they stopped to take a breath, they would lean to stand on their knees and lower themselves prostrate once more to chant at the center of the room. They were worshipping the wide pit. Something inside it screeched. I don't like where this is going, Henry said out loud. Doc turned to look at him. I'm in charge now, she said. He knew it was coming. Henry just nodded. He was almost thankful. Whatever this religious nonsense was, he wanted no part of it. Now it was all Doc's problem. No complaints, sir, he said, taking a step away from the cult and its pit. Cover me, she said. If they come at me, gun them down. Henry just nodded. Doc handed him her LMG. He laid down, extended the bipod, and braced himself against the stock. Doc slowly walked out of the shadowed entrance and into the center chamber. She had her hands up in a non-threatening manner, but the worshippers around her paid no attention. Even the couple from earlier were glassy-eyed and chanting, unaware of anything else around them. Doc got to the edge of the pit. She leaned forward to get a look down and see what it was at the bottom. She saw it. Then it saw her. "You all good up there?" "What's going on?" Mace asked. He was crouched, entering from the door with his sidearm drawn, voice low. "Bunch of kooks down here worshipping something in that pit." "What is it?" Doc turned and looked at Mace. "Come see," she said. Mace stepped over Henry and into his line of fire. Henry hissed and Mace grimaced, jumping out of the way before gingerly walking up to the pit. "Just look right down there," she said, her voice dreamlike and detached. "You know," Mace stammered, "despite that the paratroop and stuff, I'm not actually so good with heights, so why don't you just tell me what it is?" She wrapped a strong hand around the back of his collar. "It's an order, soldier." She pushed, making Mace lean dangerously over the pit. He screamed. The only thing between him and certain death was Doc's grip and the strength of the fabric. "Stop!" Henry shouted. He abandoned the LMG, drew his sidearm, and advanced on Doc. "Doc, stand down! That is one of our own!" She pulled Mace away from the pit's lip. "Not you," she said to Henry. "Not yet. First, ask Mace what he saw." Henry extended a wary hand towards Doc. "Mace, what'd you see, buddy?" "I don't know," Mace said. Doc looked at him, confused. "Sorry, sir, my glasses are, They were cracked in both lenses. Doc pulled him closer and growled, "Tell me what you saw." Mace grinned, sheepish, his face flushing from embarrassment. Phrased as a question, he said, "What est faire foutre?" Doc blinked once. She closed her eyes, sighed, and casually pushed Mace over the lip of the pit. He screamed the whole way down, the sound reverberating up the deep pit. The sound of him hitting the bottom echoed up the shaft and in the large chamber. "Mace, no!" Henry shouted. He put a bullet through the back of Doc's left knee and she went down, backwards, away from the pit. Henry reached her, grabbed her by the collar, and dragged her away from the pit. He dropped to his knees, put his left arm around Doc's neck, and placed his sidearm against her right temple. "You have 3 seconds to convince me not to do it," he growled. "Look in the pit," was all Doc said. Henry stopped for a moment. He breathed in, calm and collected, and took stock of Doc's condition. She was almost catatonic, drugged somehow, or hypnotized. Henry didn't know what it was, but he knew that she wasn't her normal self. The crushing weight of responsibility over his team came crashing back down on his shoulders, all the heavier for the loss of Mace. "Tell me what's in the pit," he said, his emotions building up. He locked the urge to scream and cry in a box and pushed it into the recesses of his brain. He would mourn Mace soon, but not now. "An eye," she whispered back. "The biggest eye you've ever seen. Henry, imagine the biggest eye you can imagine. It's bigger than that." "An eye?" Henry asked, realizing her words would be worthless under whatever drug or spell she was suffering from. You have to see it to understand," she said in reverence. "That don't make any sense," Henry said. "What's got an eye that big?" "The third eye of God as he lays buried and sleeping beneath us." Henry felt his blood run cold. The screeching from the pit came again, this time louder, closer. Something down there was alive and climbing to the surface. "What's coming up that pit?" Henry asked as he dragged Doc behind his LMG. He dropped to the floor to get into position. "I have no clue," Doc said, with a wistful chuckle and a plastic grin. Henry whispered, 22, to himself as he got back in position with the LMG. 22, Doc whispered back. 22 extraocular muscles, 22 degrees of peripheral vision focus. Our eyes are 22 millimeters in diameter. The lantern light shimmered on a patch of pale, bristling hairs as they rose from the abyss. The skittering of hooked claws scraping against the rock was echoing in the room now. The thing moved in unnatural fits and starts, its bulbous body bloated with something thick and yellowish pulsing beneath a red-tinted translucent shell. Its legs, too many legs, pulled its bulk above the pit. Like an insect, the legs blindly felt the air for purchase above it, but found the ground instead. It settled forward, facing Henry, nearly the size of an English mastiff. A pair of milky, sightless dots sat on its flattened head, unblinking. Beneath them, its mouthparts unfurled into writhing, hairy pincers, clicking together as they tasted air. The smell hit Henry first, a sickly, rotting musk, thick with the scent of damp hair and something else, something like vinegar and decay. It was the smell of an infestation. And then the thing moved. It scuttled forward in a sudden, erratic burst, its legs rattling against the stone floor. Henry felt something primal in his brain seize up at the thing, filling him with disgust and a hatred for its existence. Henry opened fire. Screams erupted in the cavern as the creature attacked. It bore down on one of the cultists and dug in. Pincers pierced and mandibles mangled as the thing tore chunks out of its prey. Henry could see inside the monster, at the pieces of viscera and liters of blood beginning to fill the thing's abdomen. Henry aimed for it and let loose with all 47 rounds. He didn't let go of the trigger until the gun clicked empty. Holes tore into the creature and it skittered in panicked circles. When the machine gun clicked empty, it looked over in Henry's direction and squealed. "You gotta be freaking," Henry said as he drew his sidearm and put the entire magazine into the advancing creature's head. It still pulled itself forward another foot. Henry took his trench knife and stabbed it in the head. Once, twice, 3 times, 4, not stopping. He thought about Mace and screamed as loud as he could as he stabbed the monster's head over and over again. The blade would deflect off certain sections of the carapace and easily pierce others. The legs and mass of the thing twitched with each strike. "How'd you God like that?" Henry huffed. Doc was chuckling behind him. He turned around. "What? What's so funny, huh? What is it, Doc?" "The iris pubis," she said through a lackadaisical smile. "Crab louse, the little bugs in your eyelashes." "What?" Henry asked again. "You cannot fathom what it's like to look into God's third eye." "And I never will," Henry said. "We're leaving." Doc sighed. "You'll never make it out. Look." The pit exploded with massive lice. They poured by the dozens and leapt upon robed cultists. Doc laughed. She laughed and laughed and laughed as Henry ran up the spiral staircase without her. He kept going until he couldn't hear her laughing anymore. Then it was replaced with skittering, loud and growing louder. Henry whimpered at the thought of not being able to get up the stairs fast enough. Tears welled up in his eyes. He tripped, caught himself, and pissed his pants as he used all 4 of his limbs to climb safely and quickly as he could. Henry scrambled to the surface, exhausted, and out of the doorway. He tore into the church proper, tripping and falling on the floor. "Sarge?" Dick asked from the bell tower. "We gotta blow it to hell," Henry said. "Blow what to hell, Sarge?" "This whole village, Dick. They're coming out from below. We gotta stop 'em." Henry pulled a grenade from his belt and threw it into the room with the staircase. "Hey, whoa!" Dick yelled as he moved to get out of the bell tower. An explosion went off, rocking the entire building. The foundation began rumbling. Dick jumped the last few feet. He hit the ground and tumbled into a roll. "Where's Doc and Mace?" he asked over the rumbling as he dragged Henry towards the exit. "Dead," Henry said. "Eaten." "Don't lose it on me, Sarge. Get it together. Get us out of here." "No time. No time. We're out. They're out." The foundation to the church gave way. It collapsed in on itself in a crash of noise, debris, clouds of dust, and snapping wood. As the dust began to settle, Henry saw that none of the lice were coming out of the pit where the church used to be. "Maybe we blocked it?" he said, smiling. "Blocked what?" Dick asked. "I don't know, but I'm glad I didn't see it, or I think I'd have gone insane." Henry smiled as he finished his sentence. The ground underneath rumbled. It felt like an earthquake, like the entire town would collapse in as the church had. The ground settled, but the nerves of Dick and Henry did not. "What was that?" Dick asked. God, Henry said. I hope it was just a dream. Dick, I fought for my life against a louse. No grand beast, a parasite. A louse clinging to the third eye of God. Tell me, Dick, if a creature so small nearly unmade me, what sight must that eye have been? This isn't a dream, Dick said. You're gonna be real hard to get back to HQ if you don't get your crap together. This is a dream, though. It's God's dream. And one day, he'll wake up. Maybe even today. I'll get you back home, buddy, Dick said. No reason, Henry replied, standing up on his own and brushing Dick away from him. Actually, there's no reason for any of this. I know the next part of the dream. The part where you fall. The part where you wake up instead of die. He pulled his pistol, pointed it at Dick's face, and pulled the trigger. It clicked. Oh, right, Henry said, as casual as could be. He began to load a fresh magazine into the pistol. Dick instinctually pulled out his own pistol and shot Henry in the gut 5 times. Only when he smelled the smoke from the barrel did he realize what he just did. Henry looked surprised, his eyes wide like he hadn't expected Dick to react. He fell to the ground. I was gonna save you, he mumbled through bloody teeth. No, Sarge, Dick said. You weren't. His lips trembled. He opened his mouth to say something, but only a squeak came out. He shook his head, sniffed hard, and said, I'm sorry, Henry. Dick knelt down and picked Henry up, cradling his head. Don't be, Henry groaned. He'll wake up someday. Then it'll make sense. Yeah? Dick asked through tears. What am I supposed to do until then? Forget all this. If you want to keep your sanity, Dick, forget this town. Forget what lies underneath. Forget me. Can't, Dick said with a sad smile. You're my 22. Henry thought about it, chuckled, and died in Dick's arms.